Hello, and welcome to Health Without the System podcast. I'm Dr. Tim Scott. This is my wife, Mia, and before she says hello, I'm going to let you know that today we're going to do a special episode where we're talking about food labels. Mia, say hello and tell them why this is of so much interest to us.
Yeah, hey guys, my name is Mia Scott. I am one of the providers here at Rixa Health. This is probably going to be a very common topic, and the reason that we wanted to dive into this is because this is something that we talk about with our patients quite literally every single day, and that is sifting through the confusion on what is on your ingredient label, how to quickly read through that, how to immediately put something back, and just, simmer down some of that anxiety that you get in the store when you're shopping trying to be healthy.
Yeah, so first off, just zooming back a little bit, a lot of traditional Western medicine, or you go to your doctor, they might have some abnormal lab markers, which we talked about in the last episode, and they might say to you, hey, you need to change your diet and lose some weight, maybe start doing some exercise, and that's literally it. That's the extent of the discussion. Where do you start to get that knowledge of, okay, how do I change my diet? What's a good diet? You have to do a lot of that work on your own. A lot of it comes from reading books, going down rabbit holes on TikTok, Instagram, Meta, or podcasts. And Mia and I take care of a lot of weight management patients, metabolic health patients, and we spend an extensive amount of time discussing food. I want to say this real quick before I turn it back over to her, but if your doctor is not asking you questions like, what is your diet like? What are you eating specifically? What are your sleep patterns like? What is your relationship like? Are you in a good relationship at home? Your family, your social circle, your friends, your exercise? These are questions that contribute to good health, and you really want to be having these conversations with your doctor. And if they're not asking you those, please seek them in other places, or find a new doctor that does work with your needs.
Yep. So we're going to kind of break down sections that are going to be important to kind of understanding ingredients and things to go over. Number one, I'm just going to start off by saying that this is much easier if you use tools like apps. Some of those apps can be even more overwhelming depending on what app you're using because they can be very strict. The most strict app out there it's amazing, but it's hard, is the Bobby approved app. The next app would be Yuka app, Yuka. And these are just tools to help you go take that, because you can take your phone to the grocery store and start scanning your products, and it'll rate the toxicity level, and it'll give you the breakdown on why something is toxic. And like I said, this isn't lifelong to carry around that, but it's just building that education and that knowledge, so it becomes a lot easier when you do go shopping.
I think a couple years ago when we first started doing this, I would have my app, and literally before anything went in the cart, I would scan it. I would look at what came back as red or warning ingredients. I would click on it. I would read that ingredient to try to understand, okay, this is what's bad. Now I don't need to do that. We have found brands that tend to be clean. We have found certain food items, certain areas of the store. We know these things are better, and I don't have to scan everything. The other thing I'll say is you can also scan products. Think of your shampoos, conditioners, body wash, deodorant, toothpaste, lotion, anything that touches your body, you can scan with these apps, and it will give you recommendations on.
Yep. So that would be a great tool to kind of take with you. And then when you're looking at the ingredients, there's some things that immediately I just want to lay the base knowledge. Number one, your ingredients will go in order with the most weight. So for example, like if water was the very first ingredient, that means that majority of that product's weight is water. So for example, seed oils, those are something that we have to stay away from. And if seed oil, like canola oil or palm oil, is the very first ingredient, that is the heaviest molecular structure of the entire product. So
yeah, or the most of it. Yeah, it's telling you there is a lot of seed oil in this product if it is listed as the first ingredient. So sometimes you might find a product that you like that maybe has 9 ingredients and seed oil is listed number 8. It's a relatively small food. That might be somewhere where you're willing to bend, and you might say, okay, in order for this to be sustainable for me, in order for me to be happy with my food, I still want to eat this product even though it has a seed oil. Here's a better way to do it because it's ingredient 8 out of 9 instead of ingredient 1 out of 9.
Yep. Given an example of that, I'll be full of examples today, but peanut butter, that's my most classic example. If you go to your pantry right now, you flip your peanut butter over, a lot of the peanut butter, the very first ingredient will be either vegetable oil or likely palm oil, followed by peanuts and then sugar. You don't want that. You want majority of your peanut butter, of course, to be peanuts. So look for the back of the ingredients that say just peanuts and salt, or some are just peanuts. So being very mindful. And from here on out, hopefully after you listen to this podcast, you understand that when you go shopping, you quite literally have to look at every single package, the back, not the front. The front is going to be very manipulative and very, look at me, I'm heart healthy, I'm XYZ. But when you look at the back, it tells a different story. And that will build habit. And then you can start to understand the companies that you trust or the products that you just know and go to. And for someone like us who's been doing this for years, we don't even have to check ingredient labels often unless it's like a new product that we're looking at because habits.
Or just to monitor from time to time. There are some things we've liked in the past, and remember they, snuck in seed oils on us. They changed their formula. They get bought out. For an example, what Pepsi bought out one of the brands we really like recently. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't think they sworn that they're not changing anything. But yes, you do have to monitor for company buyouts and things of that sort.
Yeah.
A perfect example, my actual peanuts from Simple Truth, they never used to put seed oils in it. Got it from my Kroger click list, and very first ingredient is vegetable oil. So you just have to be, you just have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, and like you mentioned real quick, packaging is deceiving. You have to remember that food is a business, right? Like companies are not necessarily out there trying to make things that are healthy for you. I mean, certainly there are companies that are, but for the most part, they're trying to sell their product. And what sells? Flashy bags, certain words, and they will. I mean, they're essentially manipulating the truth, right? Like they might say a healthy snack. Let me give you one quick example. My dad, I'm really trying to help my dad change and improve his diet as he gets on board with some of this stuff. He brought a bag of peanuts to my daughter's soccer game, and it said, he goes, "Look, T," right on the front, it said healthy snack. And I'm like, flip that over, please. And, immediately, like she said, there was seed oils, there was 2 different gums in it, there was dextrose and another sugar. Maybe molasses. I can't even remember what it was. And then I also showed him the calories, and we'll talk about the label a little bit more too. But I was like, yes, Dad, a peanut is a healthy snack, but this is not really a peanut.
Yep. Very processed. Always read the labels. That is like the biggest take home this entire podcast. And then like Tim said, serving size. So that can also be manipulated to an extreme amount. For instance, you might have something that looks like a single serving size, whether that's a little bag of chips or Pop-Tarts or things of that nature that you think that is meant for one person and one serving only. But when you flip it over, it'll say 2 or 3 servings. So you have to times that calorie by 2 or 3 times, whatever the serving size is.
And not just
that
the
can
calorie,
be tricky.
not just the calories,
everything.
The sugar. That's one of the bigger things too. I mean,
Yep.
I know calories are important. We could get into the conversation of calories in versus calories out because that is a conversation. But sugar, I'm always looking at sugar and salt in addition to just calories.
Yeah. And kind of just breaking down, processed versus ultra processed, which I will get into as well. But those are the main ones of reading the labels, ingredient lists, kind of going through things. Remember, the very first ingredient is going to be the most dominant in that entire package or whatever you're getting. Serving size, those are things to be mindful for if you have to times that. So now we'll break it down into some of our staple. Do you want to add anything to that before?
No.
I want to break down on some of the staples that we use in our house. Now, mind you, some of these things, I am not advocating that these are health foods, meaning that they're nutritionally superior. I'm not advocating for that. However, we have 4 children. We have very busy lives, and we understand that we also like our little knickknacks, our chips, our popcorn, pretzels. So we find alternative options so we can have what we'd like, just a better form of that.
Yeah, we focus on what we encourage, a whole, natural, nutrient-dense diet, and our meals are generally locally sourced meats. We try to get grass-fed as much as possible, and we'll talk about this, but I'm just laying the groundwork that our kids are eating locally sourced meats, local farms if we can, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, organic. That is the majority, but we do have fillers as well. We understand that we live normal lives. Like my wife said, sometimes we like a plate of nachos, sometimes I like a candy bar, and we're going to try to show you when you are doing that, how you can do that the healthiest way possible.
Yep. And first up on our list is the chomps. These are our staple in our house for literally everybody in our family, including my 2-year-old daughter here. These are the grass-fed and grass-finished. They are high in protein, no sugar. Of course, if you were to make this perfect, it wouldn't be covered in plastic, but some things you just can't change. So this would definitely be a replacement for anybody who's eating Slim Jims and things that are not healthy food.
Yeah, Jack Links.
Yes.
Jack Links and Slim Jims are very common because people do understand that beef jerky can be a low-fat, high-protein snack. Understanding, yes, you can get a lot of sodium, but also understand the additives and different things that can go in those. So you want to try to find a clean brand. One of those is Chomps. Of course, there's others out there. That's a common one.
Yeah, the
available.
Paleo Valley. There's a lot online that you can order. You can actually order. I have not tried these yet, but I heard that they're pretty good. Like the organ meat beef sticks, which I would love to try. But
That's
things.
Dr. Sal Palladino's line,
Yeah.
the lineage provisions.
Lineage,
I
yep.
haven't tried them either, but I'd like to get those.
Yep. But they're saying is all stick without the ick. So just, in companies will catch on to this and they understand and appreciate that there is definitely a surge in people understanding that food is very poisonous. So we are now more aware to monitoring what we're eating. So good protein snack, a good filler. Of course, if you're any one of our patients here at Rixa Health, we are preaching to you every single appointment. It is about protein. So those are a good go-to if you're in the office, or stuff one in your purse. If you're running around with the kids, it can stop you from going to a fast food restaurant. That is exactly our goal there. Let's do some pretzels here. This one's actually an interesting one. The other day I was at the store and I found the non-organic. I found this exact thing, except it just said original without organic pretzels. And the ingredients were insanely different. It was probably like 15 plus ingredients. Once again, this is not a health food. However, when you actually read the ingredients, it's just the organic wheat flour, organic cane sugar, salt, and organic tapioca. So this was a significantly better alternative for pretzels. Our kids like to do pretzels and hummus with this, or pretzels and peanut butter. And because we understand everybody still appreciates their carbs, but it's minimizing your ingredient list, no bad seed oils, and nothing that's going to be like a turnoff in ingredients type thing.
When I'm talking to people, I'm usually letting them know, like, I acknowledge processed foods are probably going to be a part of everybody's diet. You can't completely eliminate them. When I am getting a processed food, I'm usually trying to have 7 ingredients or less. I'm trying for as many as possible to be organic. I'm trying to avoid seed oils or have them very low on the list. And then, of course, just your other, like Mia said, no sugar added, lower amounts of salt and things like that. But I'm generally looking at 7 ingredients or less if I can make it happen. And another rule of thumb we stick by is if you see something you can't pronounce, put it back. We're going to talk about the 10,000 plus food additives that are allowed by the FDA and US foods. So we'll circle back to that.
Yeah, another thing that I found interesting that has helped some of my patients, I used to follow on social media a neurosurgeon who had this like game that he would play with his patients that you'd have up to 50 points a day. And like Tim said, for ingredients, and every single ingredient was a point. And the goal by the end of the day was to see how many points, as little as you can. So for instance, apple, it's just an apple. There's 1 point. When I heard this podcast, I was cooking dinner and I had breadcrumbs, which I never used often, but I just ironically had that. And I looked at the back of the ingredients. There was 55 ingredients alone in my Italian breadcrumbs, and it was like a Kroger brand or something. And immediately I was like, whoa. And it makes you much more cognizant. So just understanding that rule, like Tim said, single ingredient foods, understanding everything that's on the back of that label, and swapping out for better alternatives, because there are brands that do appreciate that and really try to do better for you.
Yeah, you want to look at the tortilla chips?
Yep. So Sete is my absolute favorite brand ever. Once again, this is like goes that saying, like, you can have your cake and eat it too. It's not that you can't have the things that you love. It's just that there's better options out there. Siete, beautifully done. If you want to read off some of those.
This has cassava flour, cassava starch, avocado oil, coconut flour, chia seeds, and sea salt.
Yep. And I'm one who now, like, if I eat
0 grams added sugar.
And no seed oils.
And
and that is like what we're preaching home. So avocado oil, coconut oil, or olive oil. Those are the only oils that we allow in our food. Other than that, if it's palm, vegetable, canola, the rapeseed oil, which is another word for canola, any of those, sunflower, soybean, those are going to be very synthetically processed. They're a byproduct of machinery. I highly recommend you guys to go look up on YouTube how those seed oils are made, and you're not going to want to eat them.
Yeah, this is a cool one. I mean, obviously these are potato chips. Like, is this great to eat? Absolutely not. Am I advocating this to be a major part of your diet? No. But if you do need to incorporate some potato chips, here are the ingredients: potatoes, avocado oil, sea salt, 0 grams of added sugar, right? Like, you at least want to get back to the basics. I saw a meme recently on social media that showed the McDonald's French fries from the 1970s the ingredients were potatoes, salt, and beef tallow. They were fried in beef tallow. Some of these ultra processed foods don't have to be as terrible as our system makes them. It's just like that because of money. Everything comes back to money. How can we make it cheap? How can we get it in the hands of more people? And it's not about nutrition. So there are better options to fall back on.
Yep. And then speaking of Siete again, we will do the barbecue chips. Once again, not a health food. However, when my kids have little snacks or sandwiches and they want something crunchy, this is absolutely perfect. These are all ingredients that you understand: potatoes, avocado oil, ground dates, sea salt, distilled white vinegar, chipotle powder, just a bunch of seasoning from there on. That is it. And these are So good. My kids absolutely love these. So, and they have, if you go to their website, they have really good alternatives. They have a lime chip. They have different flavors.
We do most of our shopping at Costco.
Every single person in their household likely has this type of taco seasoning, which is your regular
Like that
Old El
specific packet.
It's like this exact one, guarantee it. So, and then until you look over and read the ingredients, and then you realize how different the taco seasoning ingredient could be. So, siete, once again, we get this at Kroger. Unfortunately, Costco doesn't carry the taco seasoning at our location, but we pile up on these. They also have a like fajita one. They have a few different ones. But if you were to actually compare the ingredients in the taco seasoning from the Old El Paso, it's cornstarch, maltodextrone, so, gut disruptor, immediately no-go, sugar, garlic, seed oils, vegetable oil, canola oil, silicone dioxide, which is literally silicone, by the way, for that anti-caking agent, natural flavor. This has been in my pantry. I don't know if there's an expiration date on it. 2019. That tells you how long that has been in my pantry, and I don't even know why I still have it.
We were saving it for this podcast.
Yeah,
We're throwing it away. But, that was pre-rain out the cupboards for us.
So this is absolutely the way to go here. We have not deviated. So this is just chili powder, sea salt, ground dates, tomato powder, garlic, nutritional yeast, cumin, onion, and then just a few more seasoning. But this is amazing. Definitely a staple in my house. Anything siete is definitely approved by me.
Yeah. Let's get to the snacks. Our kids like snacks before beds and occasionally like some sweet treats. When I have time, I prefer to just get organic popcorn, and I make the kids organic popcorn. I melt grass-fed butter on top. If we don't have time to do that, this is a brand, it's called Lesser Evil, I believe.
Yep.
That we discovered that works out pretty good. Ingredients are clean.
Yeah,
Tastes
no vegetable
delicious.
oils. The ingredients are literally organic non-GMO popcorn, organic coconut oil, Himalayan salt, and organic butter. You can't get better than this. And we will also go into like what the label means, et cetera, for GMO and, organic, but this is a staple in our house.
I also even just want to point out how these brands I don't feel like they try to be manipulative on their labeling. Like, they're not sitting here telling you healthy snack, great for this or that. They're telling you it's a clean snack, and it is. It's clean, but nowhere are they telling you that this is super healthy, super nutritious, or packed with nutrients, right? Because it's not. It's popcorn. Like, ideally, we're not eating it, but when you need to, here's a good brand.
Yeah, that just reminds me of a point, because usually when I'm on the consults with my patients, I kind of go over some things that they can change. And once again, like I already mentioned, the peanut butter, another thing is just pure butter. And you have to understand that these labels, they will trick you with anything that they have. For example, like I already told you or mentioned in this podcast, the Cheerios, it'll say heart healthy. There is nothing in Cheerios that is heart healthy. It's literally a bowl of glyphosate. There's no protein. You cannot get more nutrient depleted than that. But
refined, processed.
You don't just go out to a Cheerio tree and pick Cheerios. It's so processed. It's disgusting. So you have to watch out for labels. Another thing that'll really get you is your butters. So if you go to Kroger, Walmart, you'll have something on the front that says made with olive oil. And then you're like, oh, this is great. And you don't check the back. And then if you go home and you flip that sucker over, olive oil will be the last ingredient. What does that mean? That there's a flick of olive oil in there. And the very first ingredient will be a seed oil. So palm oil, canola oil, vegetable oil. And this is how they get away with that false advertising. There is very little olive oil, but there's very heavy seed oils. Your butter should just be cream and salt. And even better, grass-fed, Costco, that is the way to go.
Well, and that's where kind of you get into that conversation of fats. So, you have monounsaturated fats, which are generally like your heart-healthy fats, olive oil. You have polyunsaturated fats, which can be like your omega-3s, your fatty fishes. And then you have, saturated fats. And you're going to find that in like your butters, your cheeses and stuff. Again, all of these are important in context. So when people start telling you want to be on a low-fat diet or a fat-free diet, we don't necessarily agree with that. We want you to be on a healthy, moderated fat diet. And it comes down to the type of fats that you're eating and the sources that you're getting it from. So you'll hear us talk about this a lot. We'll sometimes have our clients show us their refrigerators, like, hey, take your phone over to your fridge, show me what you got. And they'll show me a standard store-bought brand of cottage cheese and it says low fat. And I say, turn it around. Let's look at the ingredients. There's the typical 10 ingredients, multiple different gums, silicone, whatever, 3 things you can't pronounce. And so, we go over all of those. But then, I also mentioned, go ahead and get the full fat from this. Get Good Culture brand cottage cheese. It's got a couple ingredients. It's probiotics. It's clean. Go ahead and get your fat from this. Where you don't want to get your fat from is, your trans fats, your fats associated in your processed foods. That's where you want to be careful. And again, everything in moderation.
We got one more snack here. So this is our like a sweet treat. Once again, this is just one brand of many that I like. My kids are obsessed with these. They are the Unreal bars from Costco. They taste like a mound or like an Almond Joy without the almond, I guess, which would be a mound. But it would be organic coconut, organic cassava syrup, and dark chocolate cane sugar as the last ingredient with vanilla. That is it. Very clean, and I actually compared this to the back of a mound, and the ingredients are just insanely different. Once again, is this a health food? No, but are you craving a sweet treat that you just need that one-stop chocolate bite? This is your go-to. They also make buttercup, Reese's like peanut butter cups, but much healthier. Those are all from Costco.
Yeah, there's a dark chocolate bar I like
Unreal.
that has some nuts on it. The dark chocolate bar with nuts has like literally like 6 grams of added sugar, and I mean, it's a rectangle. It's like a little brick. You're gonna get your chocolate fix. Dark chocolate is a good way, to hit your sweet tooth.
Yeah, but that's a really good one. Just It brand. They actually have some good, and this is again Costco, they have some good chocolate alternatives too. And when they say Just It, like when you look at the ingredients, you understand
That's
what
it.
That's it.
That's it.
Great brand. Those are just some of the good Costco finds. We have many. We're going to do a pantry overhaul one day for you guys on our social media. So, you can follow us there. But I just wanted to touch on what it means for the organic does matter, especially, and we probably don't have time to dig into, but if you look up like the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, those are going to be produce that you absolutely should buy organic because of how heavily glyphosate they are sprayed. So for instance, strawberries is on that list. That is going to be caked with glyphosate. You definitely should buy organic when it comes to strawberries and follow that list because those are going to be the produce that is going to be most heavily sprayed. And of course, organic, it just necessarily means that like the glyphosate, that is not sprayed. Now, can they still spray organic chemicals? Yes. However, you at least know you're not getting the glyphosate, which is a really big toxic hit, and they do a little bit better. So of course, when summer rolls around, make sure that you're hitting your farmers markets. Make sure in the winter, if you can't do like frozen, organic frozen is much less likely to have a lot of those pesticides. Costco is a really good option for that. For doing shakes and smoothies, there's days where we can find nothing at the grocery store for fruit in season or organic, so we don't buy any. And for dinner, instead of a side of fruit, my husband will make a protein shake as well with fruit in it, that frozen organic fruit, and that'll be like they'll get a little shake with their dinner. So
we usually put protein in there too.
So just ways to kind of, get that down.
And remember that there are a couple different things. Don't get tricked on the label. So you have 100% organic, which means it follows all the organic guidelines in terms of growth and processing. There's 95% organic where there's still strict regulations on the remaining 5%. But then there's made with organic ingredients. And that label, that one can get a little bit dicey because I think it's only required to have 70% of organic ingredients. And then the rest of it can actually even be GMO. It doesn't even necessarily have to be non-GMO. So just be aware, not that you'll run into that a lot.
Yeah, and GMO, we'll touch on that just briefly on why that matters. Typically, we like non-GMO. Now, there's a million products out there that they will say non-GMO on the label, and it's not even like a product that would ever be GMO. They just do that labeling thing to grab someone's attention. But a big one is corn. Right off the bat, if you're getting anything corn-based, it really should be non-GMO. And GMO just means genetically modified. And what happens is they make these seeds Roundup ready, and that means that they can genetically modify the seed to make sure that when they are putting in or spraying glyphosate that it's not killing off the crops. So they make them Roundup ready. Now, why is that a problem? Because you're going to have a significantly more toxic exposure to that. Glyphosate is going to cause leaky gut, endocrine disruptors, cancer, as we know with the massive Monsanto thing too. So it's definitely in favor to do non-GMO when it comes to corn. Some of those other crops, you can look those up as well. And
look up that Dirty Dozen list. Also, make sure you're looking up various ways you can also clean your produce. You can do certain things that you can add in water to clean at home, especially if you can't get an organic one, or even when you do get an organic one, just to make sure it's even better.
Yep. And really try. I know some things are expensive. Aldi, for those of you who are local, Aldi has really good organic produce that's going to be very reasonable. And if you can't buy organic, really try to clean that, usually like a baking soda, water type thing, just to make sure you get that out. But reducing your toxic load, it is all about reducing toxic load.
So we have just a couple minutes left here, and there's one other thing we said we wanted to talk about today. So let's talk about the common ingredients to avoid. So we did, we've kind of been mentioning this as we go, but really just want to put it in a succinct list for you. Again, if you have to get processed foods, you're trying for 7 ingredients or less, you obviously want to avoid seed oils, added sugar as much as possible, but be aware of artificial sweeteners. So a lot of people will say, but this is 0 sugar. However, what's the deal with artificial sweeteners?
Well, there's a lot of them, and they can be endocrine disruptors as well. They can disrupt your gut microbiome.
Yes.
They can cause just a flare up. Also, it can kind of trick our body, the way that we metabolize things, so that can wreak havoc on our body. Typically, I'm just like
lead to more obesity later. There's studies that
Yes.
show some of these artificial sweeteners actually, they're hyper sweet and actually cause you to eat more and lead down the line to more obesity than if you just had simple sugar.
Yep, kidney issues, like decreased renal function, et cetera. And when that app that I mentioned, the Yucca app, that app is amazing for breaking things down. I was just at Costco and just trying to show one of my friends, and I scanned a bottle of Coke. Of course, Coke is going to be a zero poor ingredient. It'll say 0 out of 100, but it'll break down why. In the aspartame, it triggered the aspartame for kidney damaging, cancer causing agents in mice. And it really gives you a detailed outline. Once again, is it sustainable to scan every single item? No, but you should do this for some time until you build these better habits so you can make change. That is how sustainable change happens.
Yeah, and real quick, some of the other things, we mentioned harmful oils, trans fats, stay away from all those seed oils, but preservatives and additives, I want to talk about that real quick. I have on my list BHT, BHA, sodium benzoate, nitrates. I mean, there's 100 of them, a million of them. The point is, in the United States, there is this system called GRAS, generally recognized as safe. This is a self-reporting system that food manufacturers are allowed to run their own tests on additives that they want to put in food. And then they can report based on their own tests to the FDA that this is generally recognized as safe. Now, the problem is then the FDA says, okay, and they've allowed more than 10,000 additives to go in food. But these additives aren't truly tested. They're not tested next to any of the other additives. So you could have 40 of these in any particular food. What is their interaction? We have no idea. And then the problem further lies because people will say, well, give us science to show us that these are harmful. Give us double-blinded, placebo-controlled, randomized trials. But who's ever going to do that?
The companies can't afford that.
Right.
They're not going to pay
what
for
company is going to sponsor that? So you're not getting truly tested additives. And for reference, 10,000 or more in the United States. The number in Europe is more like around 400 that are allowed in foods.
And mind you, we started this back in, oh my gosh, was it like 1986 or something?
Yeah.
It was a while ago. And since then, not one chemical that was added to our food has ever been deemed as unsafe. Now, granted, there's been companies that have been in lawsuits because people have found that out the hard way, but not one chemical that since they launched over near 10,000 new chemicals into our food system, not one has been reported harmful by the actual the producer.
Yeah, and the most recent one is actually, I just saw this posted the other day that Roundup finally agreed, to remove glyphosate, but then they added, 40 other extremely toxic ingredients in its place. So you have to be careful. I mean, everyone's out to trick you.
Yep.
Artificial colors and flavors. So obviously Mia can talk about the dyes in a second, but be careful of the words, natural flavors. That can be just a wastebasket term that really means you have no idea.
It's blanketed,
Some companies, though, will say natural flavors and then they'll put in parentheses and list them. To me, that's better, but still be careful because they could be hiding things in there. And then, of course, dyes. There's obvious connections between neurodegenerative disorders, attention disorders, personality and mood disorders with dyes.
Yeah, dyes are a hard no in our house. In fact, this was a couple years ago. Tim came home, and this is before he was really reading ingredients. He came home with a pickle relish, and he set it on the counter, and I watched that thing slide across, and I was like, what is that? And he's like, pickle relish. I'm like, did you even read the back? It was like neon green. And I'm like, did you read the back of that? That for sure has dyes in it. And he's like, why would pickle relish have dye? Yellow 5 and blue whatever in it. And I'm like, garbage. Didn't even make it into our pantry.
That's a really good story because that was sort of as Mia was a little bit further along in the journey, and I was really trying, I'd get yelled at for certain things. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get this. I'm not going to get that. And of course she asked me did you check all the labels? I'm like, absolutely. And then she's like, well, what's that? And I'm like, oh, that's the one label I forgot to check. Dang it.
It looks like that you'd be like peeing neon. It was so neon. But that's just another example. You have to check your ingredients. But like Tim said, dyes are a hard no in our house. So for adults, that might come out as mood issues or depression or, some gut dysfunction. In children, that will straight out come out as anger, ADD, ADHD. Your kids will be like a-holes. And that is because of the dyes. So if you have any children, I highly recommend any developmental issues. If they're doing bad in school, stop giving them cereal for breakfast. Get that dyes out of their diet. It'll make such a world of difference. But in adults, not humans, in adults, it acts just a little bit
I think
different.
it is. I mean, some children just don't seem human.
No,
sometimes.
definitely not ours.
Okay, so a quick recap. We're going to finish this up. Obviously, fresh is best, right? You want to shop the peripheries of stores. the more fresh, whole, nutrient-dense, locally sourced, organic food you can buy, the better. Organic is the next thing. You want organic as much as you can, non-GMO. If you have to get processed foods, you want 7 ingredients or less. That obviously that's not a strict number, but that's a good thing to aim for. You want to avoid seed oils. No matter what you're buying, please look at added sugar, juices, anything packaged, anything at all. Just make sure that the added sugar is as low as possible. If there's too much on it, put it back. Keep that sugar down. Remember that leads to insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, chronic diseases, autoimmune diseases. Sugar is a big deal. Anything else to add to that recap?
No, I usually just tell my patients that when you're looking at your plate of food, more colorful, the better. So, pair a bunch of fruits and vegetables, of course, heavier on the vegetable side, and whether that's steamed, roasted, doesn't matter, and then choose your protein of source. That is a nutrient dense. If you look at your plate and there's not enough color in there, go back to your fridge, get something that's colorful, add that is going to be phytonutrients for your gut, and that is your full processed or unprocessed meal.
Yes, and absolutely Skittles do not count as a colorful plate of food because I have gotten that, before. I had every color of the rainbow. Yeah, but it was in Skittles.
Yeah, so just be mindful of that. And then I understand we deal with this with our patients every single day. We understand what a big lifestyle change is. However, not one diet in the world is ever sustainable, but you have to make these lifestyle changes. That is what's sustainable. And it becomes second nature. We've been doing this for years, and we have a plethora of years left in our life and our children's lives. And if it's not too late to make that change now, your body, your mind, your children, they will thank you later, because our food industry, I promise you, is not what it is. Pay attention to the next podcast about the food pyramid. It'll blow your mind. If you're not an advocate for yourself or your children, nobody will be. It's certainly not the food industry.
And one thing that might help you so that you don't beat yourself up is the 90-10 rule. We try to live that 90-10 lifestyle where 90% of the time we're trying to do these things as close to perfect as we can. We're really trying to avoid the processed foods, added sugar, dyes. 10% of the time it happens. The kids are at a festival, someone gives them cotton candy, that's sugar and dye. I take them to a hockey game, they want hot dogs. Clearly it's not going to be the best brand or the popcorn there. So I don't beat myself up. I don't keep my kids from enjoying experiences in their lives, but we really try to regulate what we can and make a pattern of it.
Yep. All right, legal mumbo jumbo here. Just a reminder, this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not medical advice. It's not a substitute for professional care, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health routine. Remember that you have the power. Join us next week to get more knowledge.
You have the power. We will give you the knowledge. Keep listening.